Okay, so Pinehurst South, we have a little bit less content to go through. I'm going to ask Mackenzie to help me with part of this presentation. Just like with the Village Place, we did a poll during the workshop and then added to it via the website for people who couldn't attend the first workshop. They were able to add to it. So here you see the collective input from the polling for Pinehurst South. Again, we asked, similar to Village Place, we asked questions about the strengths and weaknesses of Pinehurst South. And you can see the answers that people gave here. If you want to look at these in depth and in larger, as it be able to zoom in on these, this document, the full public engagement in phase 1 summary is posted to the Engage Pinehurst website, which we'll put up the link again in the chat in just a moment. But you can see that there's a broad array of answers, but certainly the traffic was noted as a concern. And some of the positives were the proximity to NC5, the proximity to the harness track, and the potential of the large undeveloped parcels. Let's see. And then we also asked what people would like to see more of in Pinehurst South. Restaurants and some more neighborhood serving retail scored some high marks, some general merchandise retail, as well as some general office and potentially some medical, all scored pretty high. Favorite place to visit, the post office, and that's good to hear. And then second was the liquor store. And we did build off, as you'll see as we go through this, of some of those core components within Pinehurst South, those neighborhood serving buildings that people visit frequently. So we tied in a new core to the area. I won't read through all of this, but I'll highlight, just as I did for Village Place, some of the highlights of what people told us. And again, if you want to read through these in depth, this document is posted to the Engage Pinehurst website. So in terms of land use, people noted the inconsistent, again, the haphazard or hodgepodge character. All of those adjectives were used to describe this area. The low density was desired by some stakeholders, but there was also a desire for a mix of uses and some infill to help elevate some of the development, make it seem more of the character of Pinehurst that people would like to see to grow up in this area. There was noted that there's limited area for office and some light industrial uses. Could those be accommodated within this area? As well as some of, again, those neighborhood serving retail establishments. In character, I think there was an understanding from a lot of people voiced that while the Village Place really should emulate the Village Center and the Olmsted Plan, this area has a different character, and it's okay if it deviates from that. It should still be nice. It should still be upholding what Pinehurst expects in quality and character of architecture, but it can be a bit different. People noted the development of Turnberry Woods as a good precedent, as well as some others for landscape and other building uses. Let's see, there was concern again about traffic, especially on NC5, and then the cut through traffic that happens on the east-west streets like Monticello and to the north. People didn't want to see kind of typical retail strip center retail. They didn't want to see more of that. They'd like to see, again, more small scale and more independent owners. For transportation, I think people wanted to see an expansion of the pedestrian circulation, make it more walkable, especially from residential to retail. We can make that walkable. Also crossing NC5 right now, there aren't any designated crossings. There are some golf cart crossings, but can we improve the connectivity across east-west across NC5? What else? I think those are the main points. Again, as we'll see as we move forward, this area has a mix of vacant land, underutilized land, a concentration of retail and commercial along NC5, and residential, a lot of single family detached residential, as well as some rental and multifamily west. And then the harness track makes up the good portion of the north side of the small area plan, as well as large lot developments. We'll also see in the plans the cottages that was approved since we started the project. So we will show that as it was approved. That is a given now since it got approval, and how we tie into that and build off of that, we'll share with you. Again, you can see, unlike Village Place, which had a few scattered vacant parcels, this area has quite a bit. There have been some parcels up in Trotter's Hill Office Park that have, were under construction at the time of the start of this project that have started to fill in. But, you'll see our proposal again shows what might over time be developed. And with that, I'm going to move into the proposed. Actually, we'll move, sorry, before we get to the proposed, I forgot Melina. Let me make sure that you can unmute yourself. Let me get to that. And
I did.
Yes, okay, great, perfect. And so we'll let you take it away and then turn it over to Mackenzie to go through the proposed plans and recommendations.
Okay, great. Just like in the other area, luckily, I think what you all see as the strengths and weaknesses are also very similar to what we would find from a market study. It's a very different area with a different character, and some of the strengths are the amount of land that's available, which allows you to do a lot of different things. You have direct access to the resort and NC5. There has been new development in the area. Some of the challenges and the threats are some of the limited access and the railroad crossings, which I think Cecily will spend some time talking about. And also from a development perspective, there's a lot of land south of the study area that's also available for development. So sort of in a competitive way, how does this area kind of compete with other parts, but still a lot of opportunities here as well. Next slide. Just like when we looked at Village Place, we looked at Pinehurst South, and this area also has a very strong opportunity for a lot of different land uses. And you can see on the one on the box on the left, actually it rated almost exactly the same as Village Place, with the exception of golf. And with golf, it's not a golf course, but potentially, golf back of the house type of operations could be appropriate here. And then on the right-hand side, we did give the planning team, an idea of how much could go there and how much would happen each year potentially. And in particular, some of the commercial land uses, we did see this as having more commercial space than the other area.
Great, thank you, Melina. Mackenzie, yes, okay, there you are.
Sure. So in addition to the overall principles that we talked about as Olmsted and as Design Collective, we looked at, for this area, health and wellness and fitness principles, and going back to the history of Pinehurst and celebrating it as being founded on a health resort village. So connecting people with health, fitness, and wellness through daily engagement, connecting live, work, play, eat, shop, and learn, all in the same setting, and promoting walkable mixed-use neighborhoods.
Mackenzie, do you want me to cover this one?
Go ahead.
I thought you might. Okay, so as part of the research into health, wellness, fitness, we did some research on the trends throughout the United States and beyond, and how these health wellness communities are growing and the potential there. So there's quite a bit of potential. There's a growing desire for not only prospective tenants and home buyers to locate within health wellness. I mean, that was the reason, right, why people came to Pinehurst as a resort village, was to seek health wellness, a reprieve from city life, from their work a day. And now many people come here for their retirements as well as for golf vacations. So there's a core of that, but we want to make sure that as we move forward, the new development in Pinehurst South in particular helps to build off of that. It's well established in Village Place, but how can we cultivate that in Pinehurst South? So as you can see, the trends are increasing across the country. There's quite a bit of demand for health, wellness, fitness communities. And what we really want to do here is not just benefit developers, but benefit existing residents of the area, new home buyers and residents, as well as visitors. And we know that from the World Health Organization, that 80 to 90% of our health outcomes are intimately tied with where and how we live. So it's critical as planners that we look to cultivate good, healthy communities as we go forward. And we'll talk with you a bit about how we do that, but the street connectivity, multimodal, open space, all of those things tie into making communities more healthy. It's not just about, is a gym located within my community? It's how I get to the gym, how I get to open space, and how can I be outdoors in nature, where can I ride my bike? All of those things are important when we talk about health, wellness, fitness, community gardens, and other things layer into that.
So taking all of those into consideration, the approach for this Pinehurst South area, looking at a gateway of NC5 and Blake Boulevard, we know there's concerns with how that appears right now. The architecture of this area doesn't necessarily need to be exactly the same as the village core, but should reflect the overall character of the village of Pinehurst. The new street should try to reflect the curvilinear character of the Olmsted vision, where practical, with the realization that this area does have topography constraints. Looking at 1 to 2 stories in this area, we looked specifically at Jackson Hamlet, the historically Black neighborhood, and how we can respect the history of that area, which also relates to the Historical Ambassadors Club, and how can we kind of bring back some of that history that's been lost over the years. In terms of land use, it was really looking at how can we create a place here, a center between that core area of Monticello and Blake Boulevard. There's already a core of uses there with the post office, the pharmacy, the liquor store, the historic Dowd cabin, and now the new Boys and Girls Club. Exploring a variety of residential types, including single, large and small, single family detached, as well as attached, and missing middle residential units. I think we did not propose live work in this area. And then in terms of a departure from the comp plan, there was a proposal for the innovation district, and with the market analysis as well as our own analysis of this area, the innovation district really needs an anchor institution of a medical or university use, which would be better suited for the medical district of Area 3. Now, that being said, if there was a future in this being a golf hub, that could change. Incorporating new open spaces, as there's a clear lack of open spaces in this area. And then traffic, helping to alleviate traffic by providing just more network connectivity, providing a rail to trail along the shared use path of that existing railroad. And then studying golf cart connections throughout that area as well. So here you can see the proposed look at the overall area. The red dots represent the dead ends, and then the dashed gray lines start to look at where we are proposing streets as well as new open spaces. This was just a quick look at the lack of connectivity right now for the Pinehurst South areas, that little asterisk on the plan. And you can see there is very much a lack of roads connecting that area compared to the Village Place and other areas within Pinehurst, which contributes to the existing traffic problem. And then again, just the existing dead ends within the existing circulation, and bringing in that. This is the proposed cottages plan that we will look at further. So in this, you can see the proposed street network. So as we started to add those east-west and north-south connections, you're having more opportunity to not have all of your traffic go to one point on NC5. Another thing that we added was the disconnect of Arnett Street from NC5 to connect directly down to Olivia with a potential full red light intersection in the future, so that we can start to spread out that traffic more. In terms of existing open space and pedestrian network, you can see there's not a lot of it. We have the existing park on the left-hand side within that community, and then the harness track, and the only two sidewalks are the new development that has occurred.
Mm-hmm.
So going from that to a proposed network and really engaging the pedestrian within not only the proposed sidewalks that are in the dashed orange, but also the pink dashed lines, which start to connect pedestrians to other areas up to Lake Hills Road, over to the west, and then down through that central area below Blake Boulevard. You'll see we started to create an open space network starting at the core area, which we'll look at in more detail, and then traveling down past the Dowd cabin down into that residential and commercial area, creating these open spaces that can actually be designed for specific purposes.
Do you want to talk about the shared use path here?
Oh yes. So in the dark green, you can see the shared use path, which is proposed along NC5, between NC5 and the railroad. So connecting an extension of NC5 to this area, going back to the health and wellness aspect of bringing in these open space connections.
Can I ask a question? What would be the difference between the sidewalks and the shared use path?
Sure. So the shared use path is a designated 8 to 10 foot path that is multimodal. So it would be more of a destination trail almost. The sidewalks are connected between the spaces.
I get it. Okay. Interesting.
And just one note on that, we did coordinate plans with NCDOT. NCDOT has a planned sidewalk on the west side, which the village will continue north of Trotter Drive. So you can see that dashed in. They do have plans to add that sidewalk. And so we looked at the counterpart to that sidewalk on the east side would be the shared use path. It would be closed to golf carts. Those would not, no motorized vehicles, but joggers, pedestrians, and bicyclists would be able to use the shared use path.
Any reason why no golf carts right off the bat?
The golf carts can connect across and use the other streets, but we can't have motorized vehicles on an 8-foot path with joggers and with cyclists.
Understood. Thank you.
Just a quick question. The prepared path or that's on NC5, but there's an arrow pointing north. Does that mean it's also going to continue and connect up all the way to like where Morganton Road is? Or is it just end over there? It's only for this new area?
It could potentially, that moves out of our study area. We would advocate that it continues, but we did not study that in detail. We did look at the placement and trees and existing trees and the alignment of the rail here. So while we'd like to say it would continue, that would be the object of a further small area plan study.
So looking at the low intensity plan first, we have that proposed core area at the top side with a line of new proposed retail buildings as well as an office building. And then we have an existing structure which we are proposing to convert to a market incubator space, which we'll look at in further detail, but could create a vibrant place within that core that becomes an attraction for this area. In this plan, we have kept the alignment of Monticello and lined that with single family detached, which coordinate with if you go further down Monticello, you'll see a similar pattern of single family detached. In the low intensity, we have more single family detached to the bottom of the plan adjacent to Jackson Hamlet. As a transition going north, you get into proposed commercial and flex, which could be small offices similar to Trotter's Hill, as well as along NC5, a similar pattern. On the west side, you'll see infill development of single family detached, as well as a handful of multiplex 8 to 12 unit buildings. And then in the high intensity, you will see the differences of the realignment of Monticello Drive. And the main reason for this being that the realignment would allow for the relocation of the Village of Pinehurst service area, which we previously had looked at that's existing in Village Place. So if with the realignment of Monticello, that would allow the relocation to be sited here in between those proposed commercial lots and the harness track. And then moving south, we have proposed commercial and an expansion of that commercial, a little bit more of the office in terms of a larger user coming into the space, as well as higher density single family attached houses, and on the west side, additional multiplex infill. So one really important thing about this plan is the phasing. So there is a lot of development on this plan, and it would take a very long time for this plan to develop. So in looking at this, if you look at the darker colors, the darker blues are the 0 to 5, 5 to 10, and 10 to 20 years. And those are really reflecting the market analysis that Melina just talked about, that there is a demand for that residential use. In the future, as the office and retail market opens, then we would start to see some of these other uses coming online, which are the teals and the lighter blues, anywhere from 20 to 30 years, 30 to 40 years, and we go all the way up to 50 plus years in the teal. So that is a very important note on this one, that this is a very long-term plan.
And I'll just add one footnote to that, Mackenzie, well said on that. Although the market analysis does reflect that the residential can be absorbed quite rapidly and there is a demand for it, this area is one of the last remaining areas that could absorb more commercial and light industrial. And therefore, the village planning staff and others have asked us to look at a plan that may take longer than the scope of this small area plan, but allows a placeholder, if you will, for future commercial and industrial within this area.
And just quickly, I'll go over some of the differences in Pinehurst South. We have the single family attached in the A1 is more of the Southern Pines example. We have some market incubator spaces, as well as the potential for a small grocer within this area. And then along the bottom, you'll see some different open spaces for this area in terms of a playground, some green space, and plaza. I know we can talk about these more in depth in the breakout rooms. Zooming into that core area, you will see that the Boys and Girls Club, kind of that L-shaped building to orient yourself. And then we have adjacent to that is an existing building that we have converted to a market incubator space. And in front of that building, the concept here is to have this large plaza that on a given day, it could be vehicular, but then when there's a festival, it could be closed off and that whole space becomes this really inviting, active area. And then lining Carter Street with some additional uses. We heard the desire for restaurants, small restaurants, as well as a dedicated open space, which you'll see the central green area. And then off to the right side, you'll see that proposed service area relocation. Do you want to talk through these again, Cecily? I know we're short on time.
I'll just briefly touch on these. You've already seen these in Village Place. The typical commercial street is a 2-lane section again, with brick sidewalks, crosswalks, parallel parking can be accommodated. And the main difference between the commercial and the residential on the next page is the lanes here are 11-foot width, and that's typical for Pinehurst. In the residential, they narrowed down just slightly to 10 feet. The other difference you'll note is, we do, especially in the core area that Mackenzie just showed, we do expect a paved area between the planting and the building to allow for commercial and, retail shops and restaurants to have outdoor dining and displays. In the residential, of course, on this page, you'll see we've narrowed those down to 5-foot sidewalks, and then you have the front yard as a transition space to the private area of the home.
So then this is a section of NC5 that we coordinated with not only the railroad, but also our traffic consultant. So with the improvements of having 3 lanes on NC5, as well as creating a better buffer between NC5 and the community, was something that we heard. So you'll see the tree zone between, on the proposed section, you'll see that tree zone between the NC5 and the train tracks. One important note on this one was the improvement of the intersection and the vehicles coming off of Blake Boulevard. So pulling those vehicles back behind the railroad so that they're not waiting at the light in the middle of the railroad tracks, and creating pedestrian connections across the entire intersection to go over to the residences in the lake area. You'll also see the shared use path along the railroad on the proposed.
I'll make a note here. We had follow-up discussions with ACWR, the owner of the railroad, and talked about their approach. Would they be amenable to having the shared use path within their right-of-way? And they are under a few conditions, one of which is liability would be assumed by the Rails to Trails organization. And the second, where the existing trees would suggest that the trail, the shared use path, be directly adjacent to the rail line. There is separation of the gravel, but that there would be a physical barrier installed, such as a black aluminum picket fence here. So to make sure and ensure there's safety there and limit conflicts with the rail line.
So here you can see an overall of the entire area with NC5 coming right down the middle of the screen. You have that residential area to the west, which you can see the corner of, and then on the east side, you can see the residential to the south, adjacent to Jackson Hamlet, the commercial kind of hugging NC5, and then that core commercial area up at the top. And then zooming into that core commercial area. So we are sitting pretty much right on top of the Boys and Girls Club, looking out towards the harness track in the distance. To the right, you can see that market incubator space, which is an existing building that would be converted. In front of it, you'll see that plaza space that could be closed, currently being shown as a little arts festival of sorts for that Golf by Day, Arts by Night theme. You'll see a proposed conceptual retail coffee shop fronting that new green space that really becomes a centerpiece to this new development, as well as a restaurant with some outdoor seating and a proposed office building.